Welcome back to Make Yoga Your Business podcast. Today, how to stay connected to your own practice as a yoga teacher. Let's jump in. Welcome to Make Yoga Your Business, the podcast for yoga teachers and wellness professionals who are ready to grow a purposeful and profitable business. Grab your tea, your mat, or just some space to tune in, and let's make yoga your business. Welcome back to Make Yoga Your Business podcast. I'm your host, Kai. Thanks so much for coming back. And if you're new here, welcome. We talk all things growing your yoga business. And today I want to talk about why most yoga teachers go through this period where they feel disconnected from their own practice. If you've ever felt like the more you teach, the less you practice, know that you're not alone. That's super common. I want to touch on why that happens, what we can do to mitigate it, and how we can reignite that spark that got us into teaching in the first place. So I've been teaching now for over 10 years, and this dip in my practice happens from time to time. It's not something that's happened once. It has happened many, many times. And I think that is absolutely normal. There's going to be seasons of life where things just get busy. We have to focus on our business a lot, on our own business growth, and therefore our personal self-care needs start to slip. But maybe this resonates with you. Anytime that has happened for me, I have gone through this period of feeling a little like a fraud, kind of imposter syndrome. Like I'm sitting here asking my students to be dedicated to their practice, leading them through energetically through this practice, and yet I have at times been disconnected. I haven't even had the practice as a part of my daily life. I feel it affect my energy, my enthusiasm to teach, my creativity in my practice. It feels like I don't have any new things to talk about or to share. And ultimately, it's just a feeling of being out of integrity, which is very valid. I think that it kind of is. But like I said, I think that it's normal, and I also think that it's inevitably going to happen. So how can we mitigate it, and how can we have this hopefully happen less? I think first we need to touch on why it is this happen. It might seem obvious, but teaching is an output activity. So we are giving energy when we're teaching a class, and practicing for ourselves is an input activity. It is a nurturing and putting energy back into ourself. And that's why without it, when we feel disconnected from it, we can get that sense of feeling overwhelmed or burnt out. The whole, if you're not filling up your cup first, you're not going to have anything else to give. And there's a few obvious reasons why this happens. Like I said before, we go through periods where we're having to start our own business, right? There can be that little bit of period that's more like a hustle mentality of I have to do what I need to do in order for this business to get off the ground or to keep growing. And sometimes that means chasing a million studio classes all over town, seeing dozens of private clients. Maybe we're trying to create content online all day, and then, all of a sudden it's 9 p.m. and we haven't gotten our practice in. Whatever it is, being in the hustle of starting a business ultimately can lead to self-care practices slipping. I think there's also something to be said that when you become a teacher, I don't hear too many people talk about this, but when you become a teacher, the sacredness of the practice, when you practice as just a student, just a practitioner, when you become a teacher, all of a sudden, this shift happens where your practice almost becomes homework for your teaching. Have you ever experienced that where you're going to your class with your favorite teacher, but now you're teaching your own classes? And throughout class, instead of just being in the flow of it, you find yourself having moments of, oh, I like what they said there. Let me jot that down. Or if you don't have a way to jot it down, it stays in your head as you practice. And by the end of class, you realized you just have this shopping list of things that you want to note down in your journal. And it doesn't even feel like you were mentally, spiritually, emotionally practicing. And the same thing can go for the kind of flow. Maybe you're taking note of the kind of flow that they did or the sequence of poses in that class. This is all just a way of saying when you're practicing as a teacher, it's almost like we can't help but take notes throughout the class. And when your analytical mind is on, the embodied present mind can't really come through. So it does take a conscious discipline and practice to show up as a student. So here's some ways that you could stay connected to your practice if you feel like this is happening. Start with micro movements, just like creating any practice, any discipline in your life. Starting small can be really impactful. I tell this all the time to my students. If they're trying to get back into the practice, don't go for the hour-long practice every day. Start with 10 minutes. Can you get 10 minutes in the morning, whether it's your meditation or your asana practice, your breath work, whatever it is, start with 10 minutes and go from there. And when you start to implement that habit and you start to see the results from it, chances are you're going to remember very quickly what got you into this practice. And create this separation of practice versus planning. So, like I was saying, when you go to the class with your favorite teacher, maybe once a month when you go, you're like, okay, this class here is where I'm going to take in all the notes. Maybe even bring like a little notepad, something discreet, where as you're practicing, you can jot it down really quick, get it out of your brain and get back in the movement of it. But then every other class you go to that month, let it go. Remind yourself when those thoughts come up, hey, I have learned enough this month. I'm implementing. This is for me to fill my cup back up. It takes discipline and it takes practice to do this. I'm still honestly pretty horrible at it at times, but it really does help me to bring a little notebook to class and a pen that I can, like I said, very discreetly jot down things when they come in my head. That way I can easily let them go and jump back in. Another tactic when you're trying to build a habit is to anchor it with something else. So maybe you anchor your morning practice with your coffee making. So maybe every time you make your coffee in the morning, you can add on sun salutations. Something I like is to incorporate dead hangs into my practice. Oftentimes I will, as I'm waiting for my water to boil to make my tea, because I work at home, I'll hang on our hang board in our kitchen and just hang while the tea is boiling. It's a good practice to get into to just make sure that you're staying connected in those fundamental ways that are important to you, and those small habits snowball into something bigger. And so obviously we all have different ways to incorporate new habits, but I want to emphasize that your staying connected to your practice is not an indulgence. And I think when we get into starting a business, the self-care things start to feel like we haven't deserved them yet. Does that resonate with anybody? When you haven't yet been making the amount of money you want to be making yet, this thing can happen in the brain where we feel like we can't rest. We feel like we can't turn off because we're not, quote, there yet. And this is a really toxic habit for a lot of entrepreneurs. I mean, if it's happening to you, no shame around that. It's totally normal. But the more we can become aware of it, the more we can mitigate the habits that form around it. So practicing and taking time for your self-care is not an indulgence. It is a necessary piece of being a teacher. So can you shift in your mind and tell yourself, making sure that I get in my daily or weekly practice is actually part of my job? And let me see if I can hone this in a little deeper for you. Your students are coming to you specifically because of your energy. They aren't coming to you because of the specific way you string poses together. Not most likely. Most likely they're coming to you because they love your energy. But what happens when you stop staying connected to your practice? You keep neglecting your own self-care and your energy dwindles, that light dims. Now, your facilitation is going to, on some level, feel a little more empty. And your students are going to be able to sense that. And knowing that, we're so intuitive, we're intuitive creatures, we're going to be able to tell when our teacher is tapped out. And so knowing that, can you prioritize your practice as if you were clocking in for a shift, as if it was a scheduled class that you have to attend Otherwise, you lose your class. It's part of your job. Us yoga teachers, because we get in this hustle mentality, picking up as many classes as we can, I think it's easy for us to get stuck in this mindset of, if I'm not hustling, I'm not doing enough. I don't deserve good income if I'm not, running around and doing as much as I can. And I want to push back against that, because you deciding whatever your class allotment is that week, for every teacher, it's different. This has to be based off your energy. So for some teachers, they can teach 30 classes a week and still show up vibrantly and energetically. But for me, I can teach maximum 5 classes a week, and that has me feeling super tapped out. My ideal class amount is between 3 and 5 classes per week. And if some of you are like, okay, but how the heck do you make enough money from 3 to 5 classes a week? Well, this is why I'm always talking about building other income streams as a yoga teacher, having these events, having these online memberships and things, so that your in-studio presence can be as powerful and potent as possible without having to burn yourself out by teaching too many classes a week. So part of your homework for this episode is going to be journal it out for yourself. Really tune in and say, what would my ideal class amount be per week? And don't let the fear come in. Don't let any shame around what you think is appropriate. Maybe you feel in yourself that if I'm not teaching at least 10 classes per week, I'm not a full-time yoga teacher. Get all of that out of your brain and just think, if money was not the issue and judgment from other teachers was not the issue, how many classes would you ideally be teaching per week? And then journal out, how many times a week would you be practicing in order to stay fully engaged and immersed and embodied in the practice? That's going to look different for everyone. Maybe it's every day, maybe it's morning and night, maybe it's once a week. But whatever it is for you, get really clear on what that looks like and schedule it in like it's your job. But starting slow, again, building these habits can be difficult, especially if you've been separated from your practice for a while. So just getting clear on what it is and taking small steps every day to cultivate that level of connection. Another piece of homework, if you choose to accept it, is start taking note of when you being connected to your practice positively impacts your business. One of my business coaches calls this an evidence journal. So when you're trying to change a belief, have a journal that you keep just to put evidence down of that new belief being confirmed. So our new belief being, when I practice more, I am a better teacher. When I practice more, my business grows. And so where can you find evidence of that? Is it if you got in your morning practice, you were more engaged and talked to more students after class? When you did your morning practice, you were more centered and grounded and in flow while you were teaching. Or if you got in your stress relieving breathwork session, were you able to more deeply connect with students after class? Was your memory better? Did you remember more names that day after class? Any little bit of evidence you can keep to reaffirm in your mind that you practicing means that you are growing your business. So I want you to remember that your ideal students aren't looking for you for your fancy sequences and all the bells and whistles. They are looking for your energy. So make it your job to prioritize cultivating energy that you can pour out and make sure that you're filling your cup back up each day. So what small step can you take today to start to positively influence your practice and start to bring your practice back into your daily life? If you found this helpful, please share it with a yoga friend of yours that you know would need this, and hit me up on Instagram. I'm at yoga.with.kai. I would love to connect with you over there. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. Take care.